You know that feeling when you're finally relaxing on vacation, Mai Tai in hand? Pure bliss. Until your phone rings, and it's your insurance company, calling about your own obituary. My kids posted it. They thought I'd died abroad and actually filed a death claim for my $2 million policy. The investigator found me sipping cocktails in Miami. Now they are facing fraud charges. Let me tell you, that bliss disappeared faster than a cheap cocktail on a hot day. Before that call, my life was exactly as I'd planned it. After my husband Richard passed away, I didn't crumble. I took the portfolio we had built together, a mix of smart, steady investments and a few bold risks, and I made it flourish. I lived comfortably, not extravagantly. My home was paid for, my days were my own, and my greatest joy was the quiet satisfaction of a life well managed. My son, Mark, was my world. Or at least, the memory of the boy he used to be was. The phone rang with that familiar, slightly jarring tone I'd assigned to him. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was sitting on my screened-in porch, watching the hibiscus flowers bob in the gentle breeze, a good book resting on my lap. Peace. But the call persisted. A mother's guilt is a powerful thing. I sighed and picked it up. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" "Hey, Mom." Mark's voice was hesitant, thin. I could already hear the static of another person in the room with him, the faint, sharp whisper of his wife, Tiffany. She was always there, just off mic, the director of his every scene. We're fine. Great, actually. We have some exciting news." I braced myself. Their exciting news usually came with an invoice attached. "That's wonderful," I said, trying to sound genuinely enthusiastic. "What is it?" There was a muffled sound, and then Tiffany's voice, sharp and saccharine, took over the call. "Evelyn, we've found it! The perfect place. It's a dream." "The perfect place for what, Tiffany?" "A vacation home. In the mountains. It's got 4 bedrooms, a huge deck, a hot tub. It's an investment, really, for the whole family. A place for the kids to make memories, you know?" I knew. I knew all too well. I had paid the down payment on their current house. I had co-signed the loans for their 2 luxury cars. I had set up trust funds for my grandchildren, funds they'd tried to borrow against more than once. My generosity had become an expectation, a line item in their budget. "That sounds lovely," I said, carefully. "But a vacation home is a huge expense. Are you sure you're ready for that?" The sweetness in Tiffany's voice curdled instantly. "Well, that's why we're calling you, Evelyn. It's a fantastic deal, but we need to move fast. The down payment is a bit steep, but with your help, we can secure it. Think of it as an early inheritance gift. It's for the family, after all." The audacity still amazed me. They didn't even pretend to be asking for a loan anymore. It was just a demand. Took a deep breath, the scent of gardenias filling my lungs. "Tiffany, we've talked about this. I've helped you both a great deal over the years, and I've been happy to do it. But you and Mark need to start building your own equity. I could perhaps help with a small portion, but the bulk of it needs to come from you. It's about responsibility." Silence. Then, a sniffle. The opening salvo of the emotional war. "I can't believe you're saying that," Tiffany whimpered. A masterclass in manufactured hurt. "After all, we do. We try so hard to include you, to make you feel like part of the family." A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. "Include me?" They included me when they needed a babysitter on short notice or when a credit card bill was due. "And the children," her voice cracked. "They talk about you all the time. They ask, 'When can we go on a real vacation with Grandma?' Are you really going to deprive them of that? Of a place where they can run and play and be with their family? I thought you'd want to be a grandmother who gives her grandchildren the world." There it was, the classic venomous accusation, wrapped in a pretty bow of concern for the children. The children I rarely saw unless it was convenient for them. The children they used as tiny human shields for their own greed. Mark finally found his voice, weak and parroting. "She's right, Mom. It's a legacy. For them. Your legacy to your children should be one of hard work and financial independence, Mark," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. "Not one of entitlement." My answer is that I will not be funding the entire down payment for a luxury home you cannot afford. The line went quiet for a moment. I could hear Tiffany's sharp, inhaled breath. The performance was over. The director was coming out from behind the camera. "Fine," she spat, all pretense of sweetness gone. Her voice was cold, hard, and dripping with contempt. "Keep your money, Evelyn. Sit in that big, empty house all by yourself. Just don't come crying to us when you're old and lonely and wonder why your grandchildren never visit. It'll be because their grandmother cared more about her bank account than their happiness." The line went dead. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the silence humming. It wasn't the demand for money that hurt the most. It was the casual cruelty, the ease with which they could twist my love into a weapon against me. They didn't see me as a person, as a mother or a grandmother. I was a vault, and I had just refused to give them the combination. I put the phone down, my hands trembling slightly. Looking out at my beautiful, peaceful garden, I felt a profound sense of exhaustion. I had spent years watering a plant that only grew thorns. That night, I booked a one-way ticket to Miami. I needed to get away. I needed to breathe air that wasn't poisoned by their greed. I thought a little distance would clear my head. I had no idea they were about to give me all the distance in the world. They were about to make me a ghost. The weeks that followed that phone call were a masterclass in passive aggression, a slow, deliberate chipping away at my dignity. The blatant demands for money stopped, replaced by something far more insidious. It started with a text message from my bank, a fraud alert for a suspicious charge at a high-end designer boutique, over $2,000. I knew immediately. I didn't own a single thing from that store. I called Mark, my heart thumping with a familiar dread. "Mark, I got a fraud alert on my credit card. Someone spent over $2,000 at Celine." There was a pause, and then I heard Tiffany's muffled voice in the background, sharp and annoyed. Mark came back on the line, his voice dripping with false nonchalance. "Oh, that. Yeah, sorry, Mom. Tiffany needed a new bag for a work event. We were going to tell you. My card was acting up, so we just used yours. It's fine." "It's not fine." "Mark," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "That is my card. You don't just use it." "Relax," he said, and the word felt like a slap. "It's just an advance. Think of it as an advance on our inheritance. You were going to give it to us eventually, right? What's the difference?" "The difference," I wanted to scream, "is that I am still alive. The difference is that my money is mine, earned through a lifetime of work and careful planning with his father. The difference is respect, a concept they seemed utterly incapable of grasping." But I said nothing. Arguing was like punching water. It was pointless and only left me exhausted. I simply said, "Don't ever do that again," and hung up, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. They saw my entire life's work as their personal ATM, and they were getting impatient for the final withdrawal. Next came the holidays. Christmas had always been my favorite time of year, a tradition Richard and I cherished. I loved planning the menu, decorating the tree, and choosing thoughtful gifts. I called Tiffany in early November, full of ideas. "Hi, Tiffany. I was thinking for Christmas dinner this year we could maybe—" "Oh, Christmas is handled, Evelyn," she cut me off, her tone bright and dismissive. "We've booked a wonderful ski chalet in Aspen for the week. The kids are so excited to hit the slopes." I felt the air leave my lungs. I hadn't skied in 20 years. After my knee surgery, my doctor had been very clear. No high-impact sports. They both knew this. "Aspen?" I repeated, my voice small. "Tiffany, you know I can't ski." "Don't be a stick in the mud, Evelyn," she chirped. "You can sit by the fire in the lodge with a book. It'll be so cozy for you. We got a non-refundable deal we just couldn't pass up. You understand." I understood perfectly. I wasn't a participant in their family. I was an inconvenient accessory they had to find a place for. My desires, my physical limitations, my traditions, none of it mattered. They had made their plans, and I was expected to either fit in quietly or stay out of the way. I was being systematically erased from my own family's life. relegated to the role of a silent, check-writing observer in the corner. The final straw came a few weeks later, at my niece's engagement party. It was a large family gathering, and for a few hours, I almost felt normal. Then, Mark and Tiffany cornered me near the appetizers, holding up a phone. "Mom, look," Mark said, beaming. "It's a video of Liam's first soccer goal." I smiled, leaning in to see the tiny screen. "Oh, that's wonderful, let me see." As I fumbled to put on my reading glasses, my finger accidentally brushed the screen, pausing the video. Tiffany let out a loud, theatrical sigh. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Evelyn, just give it here before you delete the whole internet." She snatched the phone from my hand, a smirk playing on her lips as she addressed the small circle of relatives who had gathered around us. "You have to be so careful with her and technology. It's like giving a monkey a loaded gun." A few people chuckled nervously. My face burned with humiliation. She tapped the screen with a flourish and played the video, holding the phone so only she and Mark could properly see it. "She tried to use the TV remote to answer a phone call the other day," Tiffany continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. She was performing now, enjoying the spotlight. "It's adorable, really. This whole generation just completely lost. We were thinking of getting her one of those giant button phones for seniors. You know, the ones with just a big red button for help?" Mark laughed. A weak, pathetic sound from a son who was watching his wife mock his mother in public. The other relatives just stared at their plates, a thick, suffocating silence falling over our little group. No one defended me. No one told Tiffany she was being cruel. Their silence was a form of agreement. I was old. I was out of touch. I was a joke. In that moment, standing there amidst my own family, I had never felt more alone. I made my excuses and left early, the sound of their laughter echoing in my ears. Driving home, the polished cruelty of Tiffany's words replayed in my mind. It's adorable, really. They weren't just taking my money. They were taking my personhood. They were trying to shrink me down into a helpless, doddering old woman who would be so grateful for their scraps of attention that she'd sign over her entire fortune. I walked into my quiet, empty house, the house Tiffany had called big and lonely, and I realized she was right about one thing. It was lonely. Not because I was alone, but because the people who were supposed to fill it with love had instead filled it with poison. A quiet, cold rage began to build inside me, replacing the hurt and the shame. I was done being their punchline. I was done being their bank. I needed to get away, to think, to breathe. That night, I sat at my computer, Tiffany's condescending voice in my head, and with a few surprisingly easy clicks, I booked a month-long trip to a boutique hotel in Miami Beach. I didn't tell them where I was going. I didn't tell them when I'd be back. For the first time in years, I was making a decision that was purely for me. I had no idea that my quiet escape was about to intersect with their most monstrous plan yet. The weeks that followed that phone call were a masterclass in passive aggression, a slow, deliberate chipping away at my dignity. The blatant demands for money stopped, replaced by something far more insidious. It started with a text message from my bank, a fraud alert for a suspicious charge at a high-end designer boutique, over $2,000. I knew immediately. I didn't own a single thing from that store. I called Mark, my heart thumping with a familiar dread. "Mark, I got a fraud alert on my credit card. Someone spent over $2,000 at Celine." There was a pause, and then I heard Tiffany's muffled voice in the background, sharp and annoyed. Mark came back on the line, his voice dripping with false nonchalance. "Oh, that. Yeah, sorry, Mom. Tiffany needed a new bag for a work event. We were going to tell you. My card was acting up, so we just used yours. It's fine." "It's not fine, Mark," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "That is my card. You don't just use it." "Relax," he said, and the word felt like a slap. "It's just an advance. Think of it as an advance on our inheritance. You were going to give it to us eventually, right? What's the difference?" "The difference," I wanted to scream, "is that I am still alive. The difference is that my money is mine, earned through a lifetime of work and careful planning with his father. The difference is respect, a concept they seemed utterly incapable of grasping. But I said nothing. Arguing was like punching water. It was pointless and only left me exhausted. I simply said, "Don't ever do that." Again, and hung up, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. They saw my entire life's work as their personal ATM, and they were getting impatient for the final withdrawal. Next came the holidays. Christmas had always been my favorite time of year, a tradition Richard and I cherished. I loved planning the menu, decorating the tree, and choosing thoughtful gifts. I called Tiffany in early November, full of ideas. "Hi, Tiffany. I was thinking for Christmas dinner this year we could maybe—" "Oh, Christmas is handled, Evelyn," she cut me off, her tone bright and dismissive. "We've booked a wonderful ski chalet in Aspen for the week. The kids are so excited to hit the slopes." I felt the air leave my lungs. I hadn't skied in 20 years. After my knee surgery, my doctor had been very clear. No high-impact sports. They both knew this. "Aspen?" I repeated, my voice small. "Tiffany, you know I can't ski." "Don't be a stick in the mud, Evelyn," she chirped. "You can sit by the fire in the bow. Lodge with a book. It'll be so cozy for you. We got a non-refundable deal we just couldn't pass up. You understand?" I understood perfectly. I wasn't a participant in their family. I was an inconvenient accessory they had to find a place for. My desires, my physical limitations, my traditions, none of it mattered. They had made their plans, and I was expected to either fit in quietly or stay out of the way. I was being systematically erased from my own family's life, relegated to the role of a silent, check-writing observer in the corner. The final straw came a few weeks later at my niece's engagement party. It was a large family gathering, and for a few hours I almost felt normal. Then, Mark and Tiffany cornered me near the appetizers, holding up a phone. "Mom, look," Mark said, beaming. "It's a video of Liam's first soccer goal." I smiled, leaning in to see the tiny screen. "Oh, that's wonderful. Let me see." As I fumbled to put on my reading glasses, my finger accidentally brushed the screen, pausing the video. Tiffany let out a loud, theatrical sigh. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Evelyn, just give it here before you delete the whole internet." She snatched the phone from my hand, a smirk playing on her lips as she addressed the small circle of relatives who had gathered around us. "You have to be so careful with her and technology. It's like giving a monkey a loaded gun." A few people chuckled nervously. My face burned with humiliation. She tapped the screen with a flourish and played the video, holding the phone so only she and Mark could properly see it. "She tried to use the TV remote to answer a phone call the other day," Tiffany continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. She was performing now, enjoying the spotlight. It's adorable, really. This whole generation just completely lost. We were thinking of getting her one of those giant button phones for seniors. You know, the ones with just a big red button for help? Mark laughed. A weak, pathetic sound from a son who was watching his wife mock his mother in public. The other relatives just stared at their plates, a thick, suffocating silence falling over our little group. No one defended me. No one told Tiffany she was being cruel. Their silence was a form of agreement. I was old. I was out of touch. I was a joke. In that moment, standing there amidst my own family, I had never felt more alone. I made my excuses and left early, the sound of their laughter echoing in my ears. Driving home, the polished cruelty of Tiffany's words replayed in my mind. It's adorable, really. They weren't just taking my money. They were taking my personhood. They were trying to shrink me down into a helpless, doddering old woman who would be so grateful for their scraps of attention that she'd sign over her entire fortune. I walked into my quiet, empty house, the house Tiffany had called big and lonely, and I realized she was right about one thing. It was lonely. Not because I was alone, but because the people who were supposed to fill it with love had instead filled it with poison. A quiet, cold rage began to build inside me, replacing the hurt and the shame. I was done being their punchline. I was done being their bank. I needed to get away, to think, to breathe. That night, I sat at my computer, Tiffany's condescending voice in my head, and with a few surprisingly easy clicks, I booked a month-long trip to a boutique hotel in Miami Beach. I didn't tell them where I was going. I didn't tell them when I'd be back. For the first time in years, I was making a decision that was purely for me. I had no idea that my quiet escape was about to intersect with their most monstrous plan yet. Miami was everything I needed it to be. The sun felt like a warm blanket on my skin, melting away weeks of tension. I found a favorite spot at a small cafe overlooking the ocean, a place where the waiters knew my order: iced tea with extra lemon, and the rhythmic crash of the waves was the only soundtrack I needed. For 10 blissful days, I read novels, walked along the beach, and felt the tight knot of anxiety in my chest finally begin to loosen. I hadn't spoken to Mark or Tiffany once, and the silence was golden. I felt light, free. I was sitting in that very spot, watching the turquoise water glitter, when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen, expecting it to be the hotel concierge confirming my dinner reservation. But it was a name I hadn't seen in months. Maria, my insurance agent. A lovely woman who I'd worked with for 15 years. We only ever spoke once a year to review my policies. My stomach gave a little lurch. An unscheduled call from an insurance agent is never good news. "Maria?" I answered, trying to keep my voice light. "Is everything all right? It's a bit of a surprise to hear from you." "Evelyn!" "Oh, thank God." Her voice was strained, thick with a strange mixture of relief and profound confusion. "I am so sorry to bother you. I know you're away. I just had to call. It's no bother at all. What's wrong? You sound upset." She hesitated. I could hear the rustle of papers on her end. "Evelyn, this is going to be the strangest question I have ever asked a client in my entire career, but I need you to answer it for me. Are you absolutely certain that you are alive and well?" I actually laughed. A short, sharp sound of disbelief. "Well, I'm sitting by the ocean, and I just ordered a slice of key lime pie. So unless the afterlife has excellent service, I'm going to say yes, Maria. I'm very much alive. Why on earth would you ask me that?" The line went quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Because, Evelyn, I am looking at a death claim that was initiated yesterday morning against your $2 million life insurance policy." The laughter died in my throat. The fork I was holding clattered onto the saucer. "What? That's impossible. It has to be a clerical error. Some kind of horrible mix-up." "I thought so too," she said, her voice regaining a bit of its professional steeliness. "That's what I told the representative from the funeral home who called for verification." "A funeral home?" My blood ran cold. "Yes, and that's not all. The claim was filed by the primary beneficiary, your son, Mark." The world tilted. The vibrant blue of the ocean seemed to fade to a dull gray. My son. My Mark. It didn't compute. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Had someone stolen his identity? Was he being coerced? It couldn't be real. "Maria, that can't be right," I stammered, my hand trembling as I held the phone to my ear. "There has to be a mistake." "I wish there were, Evelyn. I truly do," she said softly. "But they were very thorough. They seemed to have everything in order. They said you had passed away, suddenly, while traveling abroad." Traveling abroad? The phrase hit me like a physical blow. They didn't know I was in Miami. They just knew I was gone. And they had seized the opportunity. The cold, calculated cruelty of it started to seep into my bones. "Evelyn, are you still there?" "Yes," I whispered, my throat tight. "I'm here." There's one more thing," Maria said, and her hesitation told me it was the worst part. As part of the documentation, they sent a link to an online memorial page. They posted your obituary, Evelyn. An obituary. My obituary. The words didn't even seem real. It felt like she was talking about someone else, a character in a grim, twisted novel, but the cold dread coiling in my gut told me it was my story. What did it say?" I asked. the words barely audible. I heard her take a deep breath. It was titled, In Loving Memory of Evelyn Reed. It talks about your life, your marriage to Richard. It says you died tragically and suddenly while on a dream vacation overseas. It mentions your beloved son, Mark, his wife, Tiffany, and your adoring grandchildren. Her voice broke a little on the last part. Evelyn, it's dated 2 days ago. My world didn't just turn upside down. It shattered into a million pieces. The humiliation at the party, the stolen credit card, the demands for money. They weren't just signs of disrespect. They were preludes. They had been trying to erase me for months, and when that didn't work, they decided to simply declare me dead. They didn't just want my money. They wanted me gone. The $2 million was just a bonus for a job they had already completed in their own minds. It's amazing how quickly everything you thought you knew can be proven a lie. Have you ever had a moment like that? A single phone call that rewrites your entire reality? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story is already making your jaw drop, hit that like button, because you won't believe what happens next. I don't remember ending the call with Maria. I think the phone just slipped from my hand and landed on the table. I stared. Out at the ocean, but I didn't see it. I saw Tiffany's smirk. I heard Mark's weak laughter. I saw my own name under the words, In Loving Memory. They had buried me without the decency of waiting for me to die. And I understood, in that moment of absolute soul-crushing clarity, that the loving mother they wrote about in that obituary was already dead. They had killed her. I paid my bill, left the slice of uneaten pie on the table, and walked back to my hotel in a daze. My feet moved, but I felt disconnected from my body, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. The cheerful greetings from the hotel staff, the vibrant art in the lobby, the bright sunshine streaming through the windows, it all felt like a mockery. How could the world continue to be so bright and colorful when mine had just gone black and white? Back in my room, I locked the door and slid the chain across. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the vast, indifferent ocean. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and pink. It was beautiful, and I felt nothing. There were no tears. I expected to be hysterical, to collapse in a heap of grief and rage. But there was only a profound, terrifying numbness. It was a cold, heavy blanket that settled over me, muffling all emotion, all thought. It was the emotional equivalent of shock, my mind's way of protecting itself from a pain so immense it would have otherwise shattered me completely. I stood there for hours, just watching the waves roll in and out, in and out. The sky darkened to indigo, then to black, pricked with the distant lights of ships on the horizon. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Friends, my sister. But I ignored it. How could I explain? Hello, yes, I'm fine. Just found out my son declared me dead to cash in on my life insurance. How was your day? Maria's words echoed in my head. A cruel, looping soundtrack. They filed a death claim. They posted your obituary. They declared you dead, Mrs. Evelyn. Declared me dead. The phrase played over and over. It wasn't just about the money. The $2 million was the motive, but the act itself was something deeper, something more personal. It was the ultimate act of erasure. They weren't just greedy, they were finished with me. I was an obstacle, an inconvenience, a bank account with a heartbeat that was taking too long to stop. So they had simply decided to stop it for me, at least on paper. As the numbness began to recede, it wasn't sadness that took its place. It was something else. A coldness that started in my chest and spread through my veins like ice water. It was the chilling realization that the son I had raised, the little boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged and whose nightmares I had soothed, was gone. He had been replaced by a stranger, a weak man so thoroughly controlled by his venomous wife that he would participate in the symbolic murder of his own mother for a bigger house and a designer handbag. The love I had felt for Mark, a love that had endured years of disappointment and disrespect, simply evaporated. It didn't fade. It was extinguished in an instant, like blowing out a candle. In its place was a hollow space, clean and cold. And in that space, a new feeling began to grow. It wasn't hatred. It was something far more dangerous. Resolve. I thought about the years of sacrifice, the late nights Richard and I worked to build our savings, the careful investments, the meticulous planning, all to ensure our family would be secure. They saw that security not as a gift, but as their birthright. They had spat on my husband's memory. They had spat on my love. They had spat on my very existence. I finally moved away from the window as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. I walked into the bathroom and looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was a stranger. Her eyes were hard, her face set in a grim line I didn't recognize. The soft, forgiving Evelyn was gone. She had died 2 days ago in an obituary posted by her own child. This woman, the one who was left? She was a survivor, and she was done being a victim. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. There was no more trembling, no more shock. There was only a quiet, precise clarity. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to act. They had declared war on me, assuming I was too old, too technologically inept, too emotionally fragile to fight back. They had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had forgotten that I was the one who built the fortune they were so desperate to steal. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, alone in my hotel room, I made a silent, solemn vow. They would not get one more penny. They would not get away with this. They wanted me dead? Fine. The mother they knew, the soft-hearted woman they had so expertly manipulated for years, was now truly gone, and the woman who was taking her place was about to make them wish they had never, ever heard the name Evelyn Reed. They started this fire, but I was going to be the one to control the burn. The sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across my hotel room. I ordered a pot of black coffee and a fresh notebook from room service. The time for passive grief was over. It was time to plan. Tiffany thought I was a technologically inept old fool. Mark thought I was a bottomless well of forgiveness. They were about to learn how wrong they both were. My first call was back to Maria. I caught her just as she was getting into her office. "Maria, it's Evelyn Reed," I said. My voice was crisp, devoid of the quavering fear from the day before. "Evelyn, my goodness, I was so worried. Are you all right?" "I am perfectly fine, Maria, and I need your help," I said. "I want you to cooperate fully with your company's fraud investigation department. I will make myself available to them. Whenever they need me, give them my cell number and the name of this hotel. Let them know I am alive, well, and ready to provide a full statement." "Of course, Evelyn, absolutely. We'll flag the account immediately." "Good," I continued, my eyes scanning the blank page of the notebook. "I also need you to do something for me personally. I need you to email me a copy of the claim filed by my son, a copy of any supporting documents they provided, and the link to that online memorial." I could hear her hesitate. "Evelyn, are you sure? It's very upsetting. I am not asking as a grieving mother, Maria. I'm asking as a victim of fraud who is building a case. I need the evidence. Please, send it to me as soon as possible." The steel in my voice left no room for argument. "Yes, of course. I'll send it right away." As soon as I hung up, my second call was to a number I knew by heart. It was the direct line for Arthur Peterson, the lawyer who had handled my family's estate for over 30 years. He had been Richard's closest friend. "Arthur, it's Evelyn," I said when his secretary put me through. "Evelyn, what a pleasant surprise. How are you enjoying the Sunshine State?" he boomed, his voice warm and familiar. "Arthur, I'm afraid this isn't a social call. I have a serious and urgent situation, and I need to retain your services immediately." I proceeded to lay out the entire story, from the fraudulent claim to the online obituary. I recounted it with the detached precision of a news reporter, keeping my emotions locked tightly away. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. When Arthur finally spoke, his friendly tone was gone, replaced by the cold fury of a man who had just heard his best friend's widow had been grievously wronged. Those miserable little vultures," he growled. Evelyn, I am so sorry. So deeply sorry you are going through this. Thank you, Arthur. But I don't need sympathy right now. I need action. I want to schedule an emergency meeting. I want to discuss 3 things. First, immediately revoking any and all powers of attorney I may have ever granted to Mark or Tiffany. Second, a complete and total revision of my will. I want them disinherited. Not a cent, Arthur. Not a photograph, not a stick of furniture. I want them scrubbed from my legacy. Consider it done, he said without hesitation. Third, I said, taking a breath, I want to discuss the legal ramifications for them. Insurance fraud. What are we looking at? It's a felony, Evelyn. A serious one. Depending on the state and the amount, it can carry significant prison time and hefty fines. They have committed a federal crime. Good, I said, the single word hanging in the air. I'll have my team start drafting the paperwork immediately, Arthur said. We'll have everything ready to sign the moment you get back. In the meantime, do not, under any circumstances, speak to Mark or Tiffany. Let any calls go to voicemail. Do not respond to texts. They will likely try to contact you when they realize the money isn't coming. Anything they say can and will be used against them. They won't hear a word from me, I promised. By the time I hung up the phone, the email from Maria had arrived. I opened it, my heart rate steady. There it was. Scanned copies of the paperwork, Mark's familiar signature at the bottom, and the link. I clicked on it. The memorial page loaded. A soft, tasteful blue background. A photo of me from 5 years ago, smiling at a family picnic. And the text. Oh, the text. Tiffany's saccharine, manipulative prose was all over it. It spoke of a devoted mother, a cherished grandmother, and a guiding light extinguished too soon. It was nauseating. But it was also evidence. I meticulously saved the page as a PDF. I took screenshots. I saved the URL. Then I opened a new document. Tiffany thought I was bad with technology, but I had managed my own multi-million-dollar investment portfolio online for the last decade. I was meticulous. I started a log, detailing every instance of financial exploitation I could remember. The $2,000 handbag, the borrowed funds for a trip to Cabo, the down payment on their house. I cross-referenced dates with my online bank statements, downloading and saving every relevant transaction. I was creating a timeline of greed, a paper trail that would paint a picture so clear, so damning, that no one could ever doubt their intentions. I worked all day, fueled by black coffee and a cold, burning sense of purpose. For the first time in years, I wasn't exhausted or sad or filled with guilt. I felt powerful. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had written me off. Now I was writing them out of my will, out of my life, and into the hands of the justice system. The plan was in motion. All I had to do now was wait for them to realize that the ghost they created was about to come back and haunt them. 2 days later, I received a call from a Mr. Henderson, a senior investigator from the insurance company's fraud division. His voice was all business, but I could detect a note of professional curiosity. I imagine it's not every day you get to interview a murder victim who is sitting poolside. Mrs. Reed, he began, thank you for speaking with me. We have, as you can imagine, a rather unusual situation here. Unusual is one word for it, Mr. Henderson, I replied, my tone perfectly level. I was sitting at the same cafe where my world had fallen apart, but today I was in complete control. I had my notebook, my files, and a fresh glass of iced tea. I assume you have a lot of questions. Just a few to start. We need to officially verify that you are, in fact, Evelyn Reed and that you are alive. Could you confirm your date of birth and the last 4 digits of your social security number for me? I provided the information calmly. Excellent. Now, for the official record, I need to ask. Did you authorize your son, Mark Reed, to file a claim against your life insurance policy? Absolutely not. And are you aware that an online obituary was created announcing your passing? I am. I have a copy of it right here. There was a pause. You seem to be handling this with remarkable composure, Mrs. Reed. Mr. Henderson, I said, leaning back in my chair. I had my moment of shock. Now I'm in the phase where I assist you in ensuring the people who did this face the appropriate consequences. My attorney, Arthur Peterson, has already begun the process of formally disinheriting them. I am also in the process of revoking all financial authorizations and canceling the supplementary credit cards they have access to. I heard the faint sound of him scribbling notes. Understood. Our next step is to conduct a field visit to confirm your identity in person. Given that you're in Miami, I can be there tomorrow morning. Would that be acceptable? Perfectly acceptable. I'll be right here at this cafe at 10 a.m. I'll be the woman in the large sun hat reading a book. You can't miss me. The next morning, I was there at 9:45, my evidence folder neatly organized in my tote bag. Right on time, a man in a conservative suit, looking distinctly out of place in the humid Miami morning, approached my table. Mrs. Reed, I'm David Henderson. I smiled, extending my hand. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Henderson. Please, have a seat. Can I offer you an iced tea? He looked a little flustered by my calm demeanor, but sat down. For the next hour, I walked him through everything. I gave him a copy of my evidence log, the printouts of the bank statements showing the unauthorized charges, and the PDF of the obituary. I answered his questions with cool, factual precision. There was no anger, no tears. Just a woman providing a witness statement about a crime. As he was packing up his briefcase, looking thoroughly impressed, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was Arthur. "Excuse me one moment, Mr. Henderson," I said, then answered the call. "Arthur, good morning." "Evelyn," he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "I have an update. The paperwork is finalized. Mark and Tiffany have been removed as beneficiaries from your life insurance policy. Their power of attorney has been revoked, and the new will is ready for your signature upon your return. They are officially, legally, and financially cut off from you in every conceivable way." "Thank you, Arthur. That's excellent news." I hung up and turned back to Mr. Henderson, a serene smile on my face. Just my lawyer, confirming that my son and daughter-in-law are no longer the beneficiaries of the very policy they tried to fraudulently claim. It seems my affairs are getting back in order. Mr. Henderson just shook his head slightly, a small, impressed smile on his own face. "Mrs. Reed, you are a remarkable woman. We have more than enough to proceed. Thank you for your cooperation." He left, and I sat there for a long moment, the sea breeze on my face. The first phase was complete. The financial walls were up. They were locked out. I had taken back control of my life and my assets. I was no longer a victim waiting for the next blow to fall. I was in command. I had turned their cruel, greedy fantasy into my strategic reality. It's incredible what you can accomplish when you stop letting emotion cloud your judgment, isn't it? Turning pain into a plan is one of the most powerful things a person can do. If you've ever had to turn the tables on someone who wronged you, I'd love to hear how you did it in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story of a comeback, please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the moment they find out they've been cut off. I took a slow sip of my iced tea, the taste crisp and refreshing. My peace had been shattered, but in its place, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed. The old Evelyn was gone, but this new one was formidable, and she was just getting started. The pieces were now in place for the next act, and I knew it would begin with a frantic, desperate phone call. I was ready. The call came 3 days later. I had decided to extend my stay in Miami indefinitely, enjoying the anonymous peace of hotel life. I was reading by the pool when my phone lit up with Mark's name. I let it ring. He called back immediately. I let it ring again. On the third try, I silenced the ringer but kept the phone in my hand, watching his name flash on the screen. He called 6 more times, one after the other. Then a string of texts began to pour in. "Mom, call me. It's an emergency. Mom, where are you? People are saying crazy things. Pick up the phone." An hour later, Tiffany tried. Her approach was different, of course. One call, which I ignored. Then a single, long, rambling voicemail. I listened to it later, a faint, detached curiosity my only emotion. Her voice was a syrupy concoction of panic and fake concern. "Evelyn, darling, it's Tiffany," she began, her voice trembling dramatically. "Mark and I have just been horrified. We received the most bizarre letter from your insurance company. Some kind of terrible mistake, obviously. They're saying the most awful things, even talking about fraud. And we heard a rumor, a sick, twisted rumor that something had happened to you. We've been worried sick. Please, please, just call us and let us know you're safe. We love you so much." It was a masterful performance. She was already crafting her narrative, planting the seeds of her own victimhood. They were the worried children, caught up in a bureaucratic nightmare and cruel rumors. I almost had to admire the sheer gall of it. The real storm hit the next day. I imagine it happened when Tiffany tried to buy her morning latte, and the supplementary credit card I'd canceled was declined. Or perhaps Mark tried to pay a bill online and found he no longer had access to the joint account I'd set up years ago for emergencies. Whatever the trigger, the dam of their fake concern broke, and a tsunami of rage came flooding through. My phone began to vibrate incessantly. It was Mark. This time, I decided to answer. I wanted to hear it. I put the phone on speaker, holding it away from my ear as if it were something toxic. "What did you do?" he screamed, his voice cracking with panic. There was no, "Hello, Mom." No pretense of concern. Just pure, unfiltered rage. "I'm not sure what you mean, Mark," I said, my voice as calm as the still pool water in front of me. "Don't play dumb with me. The credit cards are cut off. I can't get into the bank account. And Tiffany just got a call from some investigator at the insurance company asking her questions. What the hell is going on?" "It sounds to me," I said slowly, enunciating each word, "like the consequences of your actions are beginning to arrive. Did you really think you could declare me dead and I wouldn't find out?" There was a choked sound on the other end of the line. He was sputtering, caught completely off guard by my directness. He expected tears, recriminations, a hysterical mother he could manipulate. He didn't expect this cold, calm stranger. "What? Mom? That's crazy. Tiffany and I were worried. We heard you'd had an accident overseas. We were trying to sort out your affairs," he stammered, throwing Tiffany's prepackaged lie at me. "An accident overseas?" I repeated, my voice dripping with ice. "That's interesting, because my obituary, the one you posted, said my death was tragic and sudden. It didn't mention an accident. And you filed the claim less than a week after I left. You didn't even wait a respectable amount of time to pretend to grieve, Mark." The phone was snatched from his hand. Tiffany's screech was so shrill I actually winced. "How could you do this to us, Evelyn? After everything we've done for you?" The sheer, breathtaking audacity of that statement made me laugh. A genuine, short, sharp laugh. "Everything you've done for me? You mean everything you've taken from me? Let me be very clear, Tiffany, so that even you can understand. Your free ride is over." "You're ruining our lives!" she shrieked, her voice a mixture of fury and terror. "My job, my reputation. They're investigating us for fraud because of you. You are a selfish, evil old woman." "No, Tiffany. You are being investigated for fraud because you committed fraud," I corrected her calmly. "You saw me as a bank account, and you got impatient. You gambled, and you lost. Mark, are you still there?" I heard some shuffling, and Mark's weak voice came back on. "Mom, please, we can fix this. Just call them off. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft now. "You published my obituary. You tried to steal $2 million. My lawyer has already removed you from my will. My bank has already removed you from my accounts. The insurance company is building a federal case against you. This is far beyond a misunderstanding, Mark. This is the end of the road." "You can't do this," he pleaded, his rage collapsing into pathetic desperation. "We'll be ruined. We'll lose everything." "You should have thought of that," I said, my voice utterly devoid of emotion, "before you decided to kill me." And with that, I hung up. I placed the phone face down on the table beside me, took a sip of my water, and picked up my book. The sun was warm. The sky was a perfect cloudless blue. And for the first time in a very long time, my world was utterly, blessedly silent. They had thrown their tantrum, and it had changed nothing. The ball was in my court now, and I had no intention of ever hitting it back to them. I had expected them to try again. What I didn't expect was their new strategy. After 2 days of silence, during which I imagined frantic, hushed conversations were happening in their house, my phone rang. It was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message notification popped up. His voice was completely different. The rage and panic were gone, replaced by a strained, rehearsed sincerity. It was the voice of a hostage reading a script. "Mom," he began, his tone thick with fake emotion. "Mom, it's Mark. I know you're not answering my calls. I don't blame you. Tiffany and we've had a lot of time to think, and we are so sorry. We messed up. Mom, we messed up terribly. We were scared and we panicked and we did a stupid, horrible thing. Tiffany is a wreck. She can't stop crying. We just want to talk to you. Please, Mom, we love you." I listened to the message twice, marveling at the sheer audacity. They had moved on from rage to remorse, the next arrow in their manipulative quiver. It was almost insulting. Did they really think I was that foolish? That a few crocodile tears could undo an attempt at grand larceny and the desecration of my very existence? They kept at it for a week. A barrage of texts and voicemails, each one more pathetic than the last. They sent pictures of the kids, captioned, "They miss their grandma." They sent old family photos of me and Mark when he was a boy, a blatant attempt to weaponize my own memories against me. Tiffany sent a long, rambling text about how she'd had a breakdown and was seeking help for her issues. It was all a carefully constructed performance designed to make me feel guilty, to make me feel responsible for their impending downfall. But the woman they were trying to manipulate no longer existed. That soft-hearted Evelyn was a ghost, a character in an obituary they themselves had written. I felt nothing. I simply saved screenshots of every message, forwarding them to Arthur with the subject line, "More for the file." Finally, after a week of being ignored, they must have realized their performance wasn't getting the desired results. The final confrontation came not as a scream, but as a whimper. I was having dinner on my hotel balcony, enjoying the evening breeze, when my phone rang. It was Mark again. On a whim, I decided to answer. I was curious to see what their third act would be. "Hello, Mark," I said, my voice neutral. "Mom, you answered." He sounded pathetically relieved. "I did. You have 60 seconds before I hang up." I could hear Tiffany whispering frantically in the background. "Just ask her. Stick to the plan." Mark cleared his throat. Okay. Mom, look, we get it. You're angry. You have every right to be. We're not going to make excuses anymore. We are taking full responsibility." "That's a refreshing change," I said dryly. "But we need your help to do that," he said, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial tone. The investigator called again. "They're talking about pressing charges. Official charges. Mom, this could ruin us. Tiffany could be disbarred. I could go to jail." "Yes," I said. "That is generally what happens when you commit a felony." The silence on his end was thick with disbelief. He was waiting for me to say, "Oh, my poor baby, we can't have that." He was waiting for the maternal instinct to kick in and save him, as it always had. "What we're proposing," he said, pushing forward, "is a solution. A way for everyone to walk away from this. We have a document, a legal agreement. It says that we will give up any and all future claim to your estate. Forever. We'll sign anything you want. In exchange, you just have to make one phone call. To the insurance company. You tell them it was all a giant, terrible misunderstanding. That we panicked, we thought you were dead, and we acted out of grief and confusion, not malice. If the victim, that's you, says there was no fraudulent intent, they won't have a case. They'll drop it. Everyone wins." I listened to his ridiculous, desperate proposal, and a serene calm washed over me. It was the final, definitive proof that they had learned nothing. Even now, facing total ruin, their only thought was how to manipulate their way out of it. They didn't feel remorse for what they did. They only felt fear of the consequences. "Let me make sure I understand," I said, my voice as soft and sharp as a shard of glass. "You are asking me to lie to federal investigators, to commit obstruction of justice, to make myself an accessory to your crime, all so you can escape the consequences of your own greed. Is that correct?" He stammered. "No, it's not like that. It's just a family matter. We can handle it internally." "This stopped being a family matter, Mark," I said, my voice rising slightly for the first time. Not in anger, but in absolute steely authority. "The moment you wrote my obituary, you didn't treat me like family. You treated me like a bank vault you were trying to crack open. So now, you will be treated not like a son, but like the criminal you are." "Mom, please," he begged, his voice finally breaking. "Don't do this to me. I'm your son." "No," I said, and the finality in my own voice surprised me. "My son would never have done this. I don't know who you are. Now listen very carefully. This is the last time you will ever hear my voice. Do not call me again. Do not text me again. Do not contact me in any way. Any further communication will be handled by my attorney. You and Tiffany made your choices. Now you will live with them." Before he could respond. Before Tiffany could snatch the phone and scream at me, I ended the call. I blocked his number. I blocked Tiffany's number. It was over. The silence that followed was not the quiet of an empty room. It was the sound of peace, the sound of a door closing on a lifetime of pain and disappointment, the sound of my new life beginning. Watching your own family unravel because of their own greed is a strange, hollow victory. There's no joy in it, only a grim satisfaction. If you've ever had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace, please consider hitting that like button. It's a silent show of support for everyone who has had to choose themselves over toxic family ties. And now, the final consequences were about to fall, and I wouldn't have to do a single thing but watch. I didn't have to watch from the sidelines for long. The news traveled to me in Miami through a series of phone calls from my sister, each one more fraught than the last. She had been one of the relatives who stood by in awkward silence at that engagement party, but now, faced with the ugly truth, she had become my reluctant town crier. The first domino to fall was Tiffany. The insurance company, armed with my statement and evidence, formally passed the case to the district attorney. The senior partners at Tiffany's prestigious law firm got wind of the investigation. A lawyer under investigation for felony insurance fraud is not a good look. She was suspended immediately, pending the outcome of the case. Her career, the one thing she valued more than my money, was instantly put on ice. My sister said the gossip was that she'd had a screaming meltdown in the middle of the lobby as security escorted her out of the building. Next came the social fallout. Word of the obituary and the fraud attempt spread like wildfire through our extended family and social circles. People who had once admired Tiffany's ambition and Mark's easy charm now saw them for what they were. The invitations stopped. Friends suddenly became too busy for lunch. My niece, whose engagement party had been the site of my public humiliation, called me in tears, apologizing for not speaking up and assuring me that Mark and Tiffany were no longer welcome at the wedding. They were social pariahs, shunned by the very people they had tried so hard to impress. But the real collapse was financial. Without my constant cash infusions, their lavish lifestyle was a house of cards in a hurricane. They had been living so far beyond their means for so long, using my money as a safety net, that they had no idea how to survive without it. The first late mortgage payment notice arrived, then the second. The luxury cars they were so proud of were on leases they could no longer afford. My sister called me one evening, her voice low. "Evelyn, they're having a yard sale. An estate sale, they're calling it. It's everything. The designer furniture, the big screen TV, Tiffany's ridiculous collection of handbags. They were liquidating their life, piece by piece, to stay afloat." They were selling the very items they had bought with the money they'd taken from me, just to pay the bills for the house I'd helped them buy. The irony was so thick you could taste it. Mark, without me to co-sign loans or bail him out, found his already shaky credit score plummeting into oblivion. He tried to get a second mortgage on the house, but with the fraud investigation hanging over them, no bank would touch them. He was trapped. The weak, entitled boy who had always had his mother to clean up his messes was finally in his 40s, being forced to face the consequences of his own weakness. The final, crushing blow came from Arthur. He called me a few months after I had cut off contact. "Evelyn," he said, "I have news. Mark and Tiffany have been formally charged. 2 counts of insurance fraud and 1 count of wire fraud for the online obituary." I felt a quiet, somber finality settle over me. It was done. "Because they have young children," Arthur continued, "and because Mark has no prior record, the DA is offering them a plea deal. Tiffany, as the likely architect of the scheme, will plead guilty to the felony charges. She'll face a short prison sentence, probably 6 to 12 months in a low-security facility, followed by a long probation. She will be permanently disbarred. Mark will plead guilty to a lesser misdemeanor charge, receive a hefty fine, community service, and mandatory financial counseling. It's the best they can hope for, and their lawyer is advising them to take it. Prison. Tiffany was actually going to prison, and Mark, my son, would have a criminal record. They had lost everything: their careers, their reputation, their friends, and their financial security. They were forced to sell their beautiful home, at a loss, in a down market, and move into a small, cramped rental apartment across town. The life they had built on a foundation of my generosity had crumbled to dust, all because they got greedy, all because they couldn't wait for me to die. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound sense of closure. Justice, I realized, isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes, it's the quiet, inevitable result of letting people lie in the beds they've made for themselves. They had tried to write the end of my story, but in the end, they had only written a tragic ending for their own. A year later, I finally flew home from Miami, but I didn't go back to the big, empty house that Tiffany had so cruelly pointed out. It was too full of ghosts, not just of Richard, but of the family I thought I had. I put it on the market, and with Arthur's help, sold it within a month. I took only a few precious things: my photos of Richard, my favorite books, and a small rosewood box filled with memories that belonged only to me. I bought a beautiful modern condominium overlooking the water, much like the places I had grown to love in Florida. It was smaller, brighter, and filled with light. It was a space with no history of pain, no echoes of arguments or entitled demands. It was a blank canvas, and for the first time in my adult life, I was the only artist. My days found a new, peaceful rhythm. I joined a morning yoga class on the beach, took up watercolor painting, something I'd always wanted to try, and started volunteering at the local library. I built a new circle of friends, women my age who were vibrant and interesting, who laughed easily and valued me for my conversation and my terrible jokes, not the balance in my bank account. We traveled together, taking small trips up the coast, exploring vineyards and art festivals. I was living, truly living, not just existing as a resource for others. I still have grandchildren. That part is complicated. My new will, the one that scrubbed Mark and Tiffany from my life, established new, ironclad trust funds for the children. They will be taken care of, educated, and given a start in life. But the funds are managed by a neutral third party, and the terms are strict. They can never be used as collateral or borrowed against. It was the last act of a grandmother protecting her family from the greed she now knew ran in its veins. I send them birthday and holiday cards, signed with love, but I keep my distance. I cannot expose my newfound peace to the poison of their parents' influence. Perhaps one day, when they are adults, they will understand. Perhaps they won't. I have made my peace. With that, one sunny afternoon, I was sitting on my new balcony, which overlooks a sparkling marina. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. My friend Carol, a retired professor with a wicked sense of humor, was sitting across from me. We were sipping chilled white wine and laughing about a disastrous attempt I'd made at baking a cake the day before. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Arthur. The subject line simply read, "It's done." Tiffany had reported to the low-security correctional facility that morning to begin her sentence. The final chapter of their story had been written. I read the email, took a slow sip of my wine, and then put the phone away. I didn't feel a surge of victory or a pang of sadness. I just felt quiet. The past was finally where it belonged. In the past. Carol must have seen a flicker of something on my face. "Everything okay, Evelyn?" I looked out at the sailboats bobbing in the harbor, their white sails bright against the blue water. I thought about the journey of the last year, the shock, the cold resolve, the quiet rebuilding. I had been declared dead, and in a way, they had been right. The woman I was, the one who absorbed disrespect and excused cruelty in the name of family, had truly died that day in Miami. But in her place, someone stronger had been born. Someone who understood that self-respect is not a luxury, it's a necessity. "Everything is perfect, Carol," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. I raised my glass. "To new beginnings." She clinked her glass against mine. "I'll drink to that." As I look back on it all, I realize that what they did, as horrific as it was a gift. It was a brutal, painful gift, but a gift nonetheless. It severed a tie that was slowly draining the life out of me, and it forced me to build a new life, one based not on obligation, but on joy. Today, my peace is my greatest wealth, and every subscription to this channel feels like a vote of support for other women and men to find their own voice and demand the respect they deserve. Please help this community grow stronger by sharing this story. Because the final, most important lesson is this: never let anyone write your obituary for you. You are the author of your own story, and it is never, ever too late to write a triumphant final chapter.